Halliburton, everybody standing at State Farm. Over the top to Buddy. Working on Bogey. He fires a three. He connects! Incredible shot making!
What is up, Pacers Nation? You are listening to the Pacers Post Up, brought to you by the brothers of basketball, Brad and Ryan. Bye, buddy. Hope you find your... I don't know what he's going to find, but Buddy Hield is out. My goodness, Doug McDermott back in the blue and gold. And the week is finally here. It is NBA All-Star Indianapolis 2024. Let's get into it. I'm excited. You're listening to the Pacers Post Up. We are rocking and rolling here, kind of diving into episode number 3. We're going to be talking about the trade deadline, everything that happened, everything that didn't. We're obviously recording this right before the All-Star break, so we just played in New York last night and got a much-needed victory.
Yep.
And so, yeah, we're going to kind of, we got 2 more games before the All-Star break, but it's perfect time in the season to kind of take a look at where we're at, what we have going on. And just kind of roll from there. So Ryan, I'll kick it over to you to get us started. What's on your mind?
So I thought we'd start with the trade deadline. It was a quiet one across the NBA. I think, the big moves kind of happened before. Obviously, we probably made one of the larger ones, if not that, with Siakam.
For sure.
But we still made moves. Obviously, I think if you're a Pacer fan, you're aware we shipped out Buddy Hield. So I'll just kind of run down the trade quickly. It kind of got changed after even the trade deadline. Basically, we gave up Buddy Hield for Korkmaz, who we waived, and then Doug McDermott, a 2024 second rounder for the Raptors,
Yep.
a 2029 second from the Blazers, and then cash, and then shipped the other one that we got to the Spurs. But not a huge trade, but give me your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is something that we've been talking about this for a long time. The big splash was Siakam, and we've already gone into that in detail. And we can kind of talk about where we're at. You know,
Yep.
Siakam's, I don't know what he's in, 12, 15 games in,
Yep, 13.
post, is it 13? Okay, post-trade. So we can talk about that a little bit. You know, I think if you listen to Chad Buchanan, it makes sense. It's kind of, I don't want to say we're being wishy-washy, but it's kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out the door as far as this season concerned. We're sitting at 6th place in the Eastern Conference, and does this move make us better? Probably not.
No.
I mean, there's an argument to be made that maybe it improves us defensively. Yeah. Now, interestingly enough, McDermott got the minutes and not Shepard last night, so I'm not sure that that argument doesn't hold a lot of weight if that's going to be the case. But I think we get probably worse slightly for this season.
Yeah.
I do. So if you're all in on this season, you're probably not happy with this trade.
Yeah.
But in the long term, I get it. It sounds more and more like Buddy was not going to be a part of the equation long term. So if you get an opportunity to get an asset, we traded away our 2 first-round picks this year in the Siakam deal. Right now, I think I saw that this Toronto pick that we picked up in 24 is like 36 overall.
Something in there.
So there's still value there. You bring in a guy in McDermott, maybe he shows you something in the last 30 or so games that allows you to bring him back at a cheaper price than a Buddy Hield. If not, then he moves on and we're the same place we were. So I think. I think also if you're a glass half full person, the hope here would be that a Mathurin, a Nembhard, a Shepard, some of these other guys that were competing for minutes with Buddy, maybe get a little bit more run here in the back half of the year. Maybe they have some more opportunity to show you something. Overall, I wish Buddy well. I love Buddy. I thought he was a great guy. He was a lot of fun to watch, but this was a deal that felt like we were trying to squeeze an asset out of something that was essentially going to be gone.
Yeah, I think that's really a good place to start. From all accounts, it sounded like Buddy was probably out. If you kind of read between the tea leaves, it looks like this previous offseason, we probably offered him an extension that he declined, didn't think it was the value. Tough to get there. He probably saw his role diminishing a bit. So I think you have to take that in account. It sounded like he kind of wanted to go to Philly, and knowing KP, I think he always tries to do well by our players.
For sure.
And that's a good thing because he's got a good reputation around the league for that, and it helps bring players in at the same time because he knows he'll help them out. Another thing to look at, too, is if you're looking at the teams next year that are going to be playoff competitors but also have cap space, it's a very small list, and the 76ers are at the top of it. So I think there might be even, they talk about tampering, whatever. If the Sixers can't go out and get, there's a couple big names, not a ton this year, the free agency, depending on who signs extensions. But if
PG, maybe,
if they strike out on that, I think you'll probably see that Buddy gets something like that Bruce Brown contract, where he might get $20 million a year in that range with a team option on the end, or something kind of in that, depending
shorter
on
term.
What he's looking at, because the Sixers will have the money. And that's one thing I will say, as if you were a Sixers fan, I think you're more excited for this trade for sure. You're probably looking at it all right, we gave up some seconds. We get one of the elite shooters. He might be having a slight down year, but he's still one of the elite shooters in the league, and he helps them. So from that angle, I would definitely see that. But that Raptors pick, could be something we've, and I actually have a little bit here that I wanted to go through. If you look, we have always talked about that the Pacers aren't particularly great at their first-round draft picks. We've seen that. We've whiffed. But we're actually not horrible with second-rounders and finding undrafted guys. So I wanted to read. I looked through post-Miles Turner.
Lance.
Yeah, there you go. Post-Miles Turner, I looked through all of our draft picks and a couple just free agency or, guys who didn't get drafted that we added.
Okay, I'm curious. This is nice.
So our first-round team, if you take our first rounders, would be Aaron Holiday, Ben Mathurin, Chris Duarte, TJ Leaf, and Goga Batadze.
Wow.
Not a great particular team. Mathurin we still like, hopefully, and we might talk on him a little bit later. Let's look at our second round team. Andrew Nembhard, Sumner, George Niang, Alize Johnson, and Terry Taylor.
Okay.
Truthfully, that team probably competes with the other team.
Oh, I think it does.
Not, is maybe better, especially defensively. And a lot of those guys are still. Sumner had some injury problems, but I was always a big fan of his game.
For sure.
But when you look at it that way, you look at that Raptors pick, and you're getting something that, like you said, that it's an asset you can trade, you can use, you can pick. We have no other picks now next year, so that's kind of the one you're looking at. So I do get it. The one argument I do get that a couple of my friends text me, it's if you don't like that value, why don't you just keep Buddy, even if you know you're going to lose him just for this run? And I kind of get that, but I'm also in the boat where I want Nembhard minutes, I want Mathurin minutes, I want Shepherd minutes. Now in the playoffs, I get it, you want the vets. But I like it. If you're going to lose them, I'm in the boat that we are not that win now that you need to hold them just for this specific run. So I think it was the right move. And like I said, if KP is doing something by right to get Buddy elsewhere, I think if there was a first-round trade, first-round draft pick on the market, he would have taken it. But
for sure,
scoring is just not as valuable. Now, shooting's still valuable, but we kind of talked about this. Scoring is not. You need, the players that are going for a lot, like OG, play defense, because that's what's needed in the league.
And we talked about this, prior to the episode. I forget if you said it was Bill Simmons or somebody else was talking about how scoring is not the issue in the NBA.
No, there are microwave scorers all across the league.
100%. I mean, look at Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks. I mean, Burks gets hot at the end of the game last night, and it's just like boom, boom, boom. And this is a guy that, he's been playing for Detroit, but he can put up points. And that's why the Knicks obviously made the move to get some of the players that they did. But it is, and Carlisle he's not minced words when it's come to, talking about who's going to get run with this team. It's the guys that compete at both ends of the floor. And I know Buddy, I'm not questioning his effort. Obviously, he's an NBA Iron Man in terms of number of missed games and things like that. He's a great competitor, but his skill set is limited on the defensive end of the floor. And I think, that's kind of where I go back to the point of if we get a little bit better here with his absence, it's probably on the defensive end.
100%,
and again, I love Buddy, but he was having a down year. If you look at his splits in the last 10 or 15 games, I mean, he's been slumping for a while. Now, he's gone in first couple of games in Philly. He's, 20 plus, but he's getting a lot more shots. And frankly, they had more of a need for what he brought to the table 100%. Than even we did. So, maybe it's one of those things that, I get it. Buddy's well liked, not only in the locker room, he's Tyrese's boy or whatever. He, and he was well liked in the fan base. I think that's what makes it hard is you're getting rid of a fan favorite for not a whole lot in return. Like you said, it's not the first round draft pick. It's not a blockbuster trade, but it's this organization saying, we understand where we're at. We think we can still get to the playoffs. Again, for me, the floor is still the 6th seed. You cannot go below the 6th seed. 100%. Siakam was a quote unquote win more now, maybe not a win at all now, but win more games now type of move. So, this isn't exactly that, but we'll have to see how it all plays out. I mean, the reality is, fucking Ben Matherin was playing a little bit better, nobody would care as much about this. And we could talk about Matherin a little bit later on, but we'll see where it goes. I did think there was some humor around it all. I saw a lot of chatter about, oh, do you think that they ran this by Tyrese? How's he feeling? It's like, Tyrese knew what was going on. I mean, anybody that believes he was blindsided by this is not paying attention to modern NBA. So the locker room hit. I mean, Miles touched on it briefly. It's like, yeah, Buddy was a positive energy guy.
The writing was on the wall this offseason that he was likely going to be traded at this time, specifically.
For sure. I mean, and listen, I'm sure Buddy had conversations with Tyrese about that. They didn't get a deal done. It's not like the Pacers were like, oh, we don't want to factor Buddy in. Yeah. They didn't get a deal done. Buddy thinks he's worth a certain amount or a number of years or whatever it is, and that'll come out, I'm sure, this offseason. Yes. We'll see what he thinks his value is and what the market says it is. And we're going to move forward with the younger guys that we have. And listen, you know how I feel about guys like Shepherd. We still can't get Jarris Walker off on the floor. He's on the West Coast Mad Ants road trip right now. So we've got to figure out ways to get these guys more on the floor. Buddy's a great guy, and we'll kind of move on. Were there any other deals, I guess, at the deadline, just to kind of pivot off of that? Obviously, it was not a huge deadline across the NBA. You did not have major stars relocating, but I'm curious if there were any other deals that kind of stuck out to you around, teams that you thought, okay, that was interesting, or I've got one.
I was going to say, I think we're both going to the same. I think if you want to look at one team outside of us that did really well at the deadline with Siakam, I'm talking more.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely be the Knicks.
100%.
I think there is no doubt. They gave up some talent, Grimes, Quickly, Barrett. Those guys are all good, but they held on to all their firsts, and then they add OG and Bojan and Alec. I'm a big fan of OG and Bojan. Obviously, Indy fans are big fans of Bojan. And there's a chance, if you look at the East right now, especially with the Sixers, we don't know how long Embiid's going to be out. If you look at Vegas, they're more likely to fall below us, according to them, and they are the experts. So we'll have to see. I would love a first-round matchup against the Knicks. I think that'd be my favorite one, just with all the storylines, even with the Brunson wannabe stuff, and even just our history with the Knicks would be pretty fun. So I think they did really well keeping, and the one thing I'll even say about that we need to watch is they are primed to add another star too. Donovan Mitchell, if Giannis gets unhappy, whoever the next superstar that's unhappy that wants a big market can play with Brunson, they're going to have a lot of assets to go after him, sign him, cap space. So they're a team to watch. Like I said, I like the competition. I think Tyrese gets fueled for those games. We saw it last night. For sure. He had one of his best games since kind of getting back from his injuries. So I think they're definitely the team that stood out to me.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, you're adding guys that are, like you said, microwave scorers. Bojan can get going. He can space the floor. Everybody... this is what I hate about just Pacers fans in general. TJ McConnell and Tyrese Halliburton used this word gravity the other day and talking about Buddy Hield and what he does on the offense. And now everybody online is talking about the gravity of the players and, that he draws two and all the attention. And it's like, that's been the case for a long time. Good players draw attention. And that's what's going to happen with a guy like Bojan. You plug him in, he now stretches the floor. And Brunson, I will say this, I have been slow rolling Brunson. I'm not a fan of undersized point guards who aren't really that great on defense, albeit Tyrese is not the best defender in the world either. Brunson just never really suited my eye, but the guy is good. I mean, he's crafty. He uses his body. He's strong. He gets to his spots, and it's almost like, he's got this hesitation, off-rhythm kind of movement.
Kind of like Paul Pierce. He's obviously a lot different size than Paul Pierce was. But, it's an unorthodox. It's hard to judge when he's going to change speeds, how he's going to use his body.
Frankly, I don't see Aaron Nesmith struggle with a lot of guys. I mean, even Booker puts up 62. Neesmith's in his grill the whole time.
Yeah,
Booker's just on fire, you know.
He's done that before.
But Neesmith was having a hard time with Brunson's herky-jerky movement last night, and we saw that in the first game. Nembhard does a pretty good job. I mean, both those defenders keep their chest into you, which I love. They're always making you feel them. But, man, Brunson gets to his spots. And that Knicks team, that would be a phenomenal series.
Oh, yeah.
There's so many different things at play. You've got the OG and Siakam components, the two trades that happen, and both of those players probably could have been playing for the other team, depending upon how those negotiations go out. You've got the Team USA, Halliburton, Brunson connection, two obviously rising stars at the point guard position. And that's what's going on now. You've got all the history of Pacers-Knicks, which just makes it even that much more exciting. I mean, I loved watching last night, and this is not about a Pacers-Knicks podcast, but we can just talk about it briefly. McConnell was talking to the fans. Halliburton was talking to the fans. Poor Obi Toppin tried his between-the-legs dunk. I'm with you. I think that would be a very fun series. And I think right now it wouldn't line up. I think the Knicks dropped to 4th last night after the loss. We're still sitting in 6, about a game or maybe half a game ahead of the Magic, something like that. They won last night.
But outside of Boston, I mean, the Cavs are second, and it's anybody's game. It's a couple game difference between everybody.
I will say speaking of other trades that I liked, and I spend more time looking at the Eastern Conference than I do the West, but I thought it was interesting that Patrick Beverley made his way to Milwaukee. Not only is there the Lillard history dynamic, but that's a team that they need defense. I mean, they can't defend anybody, and he's going to obviously bring some of that. I still am not really scared by Milwaukee.
I'd love to play him.
Yeah, I think that's a very favorable matchup for us. But
I mean, don't get me wrong. I think that they would be favored and rightfully so. But we, as Pacer fans, we've seen it. We love it, and we love the energy those games bring. They have been some of the most fun games this year.
Yeah, I agree. Honestly, I think the toughest matchups for us are New York and Boston.
Yeah.
I don't, when Philadelphia's at full strength.
Philly's the one, but the way it's very unlikely we would match up, I think, in the first round.
I think we're going to have two similar records. And for me, that's really, to kind of start pivoting here, I think we want to talk about Siakam and just where he's at, and then kind of talk about some all-star stuff. I think it's important. This time of season, everybody kind of says, get to the All-Star break, get to the All-Star break. And I think, I'm curious, Ryan, your thoughts on where are we at? Like going, where, obviously I know where we're at. We're 6.
Can I actually cut you off? There were two things I wanted to say on the deadline.
Please. No, sorry. We're just kind of going off the cuff.
They're very brief. So I got a few texts from friends and stuff. They're like, so we gave up Hield for nothing. We kind of discussed those picks. I'd also like to say we traded 2 late seconds for Obi this offseason. So those picks can turn into those young guys who you can take a flyer on. So it's not nothing.
For sure.
And then the other thing I wanted to kind of bring up, because it gets overlooked, is we made that deal with the Warriors, and even the Sixers gave us a little cash, where we basically sent it off for cash. We traded a pick, waived Corey Joseph, loved having him for 2 seconds, but
he was in Indy.
Yeah. But probably stayed in the hotel that night.
Yeah, I'm sure he did.
But I think there's one thing to watch that I'm hoping that if Herb Simon called KP and said, hey, let's make a few deals to give me a little cash right now to then store this offseason to potentially make a play later on.
Yeah.
He's always talked about he would go in the luxury tax. He never has.
Yeah.
He has a new part owner with him, hopefully with some change in the pocket. So I just wanted to say, you're never, as a fan, happy to see your owner trade picks basically just for cash. It would be nice to have one of the owners who can just throw millions out at will, but that's just not what it is. So if Herb said it like that, said, hey, give us that, I think it was like 5.6 we got from the Warriors. Now some of that goes to the buyout. But a little bit of cash, if that makes him more willing later to spend, then I'm okay with that, I guess.
Well, it's a funny point that we probably it doesn't get talked enough about, at least in the channels that I follow. At the end of the day, it's still a business.
Yeah.
Herb Simon owns this. It is a business that he runs. And so as much as we want to talk about players and Buddy in this, and, yes, in theory, for your business to be excelling, you have to have wins on the court. We all get that. But if you can put a little more money in your pocket now to maybe say, okay, when that opportunity comes, and I guess I'll just touch. I know you said you had one more thing you wanted to.
No, those were the two.
Okay, so I'll put this plug in, I guess, now as we talk about future and from a cap space perspective, the Siakam. We talked about this on the Siakam episode. That we're going to sign Siakam. That's the goal. That trade doesn't happen without something somewhere, and everything that he's said and done.
That's going to be a point. He has done his best job without literally coming out and saying, hey, I want to re-sign here and probably will. He basically the first game said, I want to make this place home, which is
for sure.
The quotes. Now, we've kind of heard that before, but with the contract, he has done everything. There's no reason not to think we're going to come
with it. I think we're all assuming that deal is going to get done. It's probably going to get done in I don't know what the number is, $40 million a year.
It's really tough to gauge right now. I don't know what he'll get. If we can get him anything under the max in that range, that's a steal. If we have to pay him, we have to pay him.
Yeah, and that's going to eat into our flexibility, and we've talked about that in the context of guys like Buddy, a guy like Obi Toppin. Where does he fit, in a contract year? And I think Jalen Smith's got a player option coming this summer, so we may have to, renegotiate. I heard some guys, I think it was Query or somebody on the local radio was talking about where his value's at, and they were on with Tony East, and they landed somewhere around $8 to $12 million, and I think that's fair. I mean, Neesmith's at that $11 million mark. I think
that's an underpay.
It's a steal. We could talk about Neesmith here in a little bit, but I think Jalen Smith. I mean, Biggs. Listen, he can stretch the floor. He's played well. That's not really the point here. I just wanted to touch on we're not going to have the kind of cap flexibility that we've been known for in the last couple of years. That's going to be very different. So there was one rumor out there that I wanted to touch on just because I find it interesting. We've already talked about it off, kind of before the podcast, but there was, and I would only be bringing this up because it sounded like there was a hint of mutual interest in a Paul George return to Indiana, which for me is like, I don't even know how to feel about it, because it was one of those things where it was like, you're talking about a guy who basically said, Indy, you're not good enough. You can't get me where I want to go. I want the bright lights. And granted, he signed an extension in Oklahoma City. I don't pretend to know all the nuances, although he does talk fondly of Indy.
Yeah.
Like
it seems over the last couple years, especially now that he's got his podcast and he's settled in, and the LA thing is clearly not, at least now, this is probably the best run they've had at it. It has not gone how they expected, and I think he's kind of humbled. And if you listen to any of the Paul George, Tyrese podcast, it's clear that they are good friends and have a lot of mutual interest in that front. Now, does that mean he wants to come here? I don't know.
We don't know. But it's interesting that it's being reported now. Somebody's and if you listen to any of these player podcasts, and it's just fun to listen to, there's always more going on. I mean, I just saw a reel come across the other day from Paul George's podcast where he was talking about a trip he took to Cleveland with LeBron, talking about how this was before the OKC deal, talking about what it could look like. And LeBron was like, I'm going to push for this, and try and make this happen. So these guys talk. There's always, there's always more than meets the eye. Obviously,
that's how Kevin Durant and Kyrie, it was at the All-Star game. They started chatting, and that's how they ended up deciding they wanted to meet up in Brooklyn.
Yeah. And so, don't kid yourself. As a fan, we know next to nothing. I mean, I feel like I follow it as much as I can. But anyways, anytime a report like that comes out that there's mutual interest, it's intriguing. You and I have spoken. I think in order for a deal to get done, you were kind of saying that it's going to have to be a sign and trade of some sort. We're not going to be able to
especially with Siakam. There's no way.
Halliburton's extension kicks in, signing Siakam to a potential max, and then Paul George is obviously looking for his final push, if you will. I think he's now 33 years old. So, listen, LeBron's a freak, but I don't think anybody's looking to play till they're 38. Most players aren't. So he's probably got another 2, 3, maybe 4 years of good run in him. But, a lot. One other thing on the deadline, if I'm going to talk about Paul, I have to bring up some comments that were made by Chad Buchanan. This is the fan in me. I'm sure this is not what they're thinking, but he did talk about having this roster spot open and leaving some flexibility in case, buyout market, whatever.
This is how it happened last time.
Lance is putting up some big numbers.
Literally how it happened last time.
He's putting up some big numbers for the Wolves. He hit a game winner the other night. And I got to tell you what, just looking at the highlights, the Wolves, the Iowa Wolves, which is the Timberwolves G League team, they sell out. I mean, they are packing the arena. I don't know if it's Lance. I don't know if they were sellouts before Lance got there.
Say it's Lance.
Yeah, I'm just telling you what, he Come on, Kevin. I mean, just one more run here. This would be the most fun team to have with the playmakers that we have, the Obi Toppins. I mean, it just.
Let's say he doesn't have to play. We have our rotation set. He can be the emergency point guard behind TJ McConnell if anybody goes out. And I would only say just play him home games.
Yeah,
just in Indy.
And you know he's gonna. I mean, something happens when he gets in the field house. He becomes like this next level player. Can't even make an NBA roster, and then comes back in. And I'll never forget that 20-point first quarter.
It's the best. I mean,
it's one of the most fun times I've had at the field house. But anyways, we will long for Lance forevermore, and we'll see if it ever happens. But no, I think at this point we got to kind of talk about where we're at in the season. Expectations and things like that as we're kind of getting into All-Star break. And I do want to touch on kind of some of the stuff that's coming up downtown, because I think it's going to be a pretty cool week, and obviously everybody loves Indy as a host city, and we can talk a little bit about that. But I'm curious, Ryan, if you go back, and so much of this is, there's recency bias in all this, and the dynamic has shifted because of some of the moves that we've made, right? But from where you were at in terms of expectation for this team coming into this season, and where we sit now, 2 games away from the All-Star break, and I forget what we are over 500. We're 6 or 7. I think we're 30 and 24. Yeah, 6 games above 500. If you grade us, what kind of grade do you give us right now?
Well, I'll just say, coming into the season, I think I had 2 goals. 1, make the playoffs. And then 2 was, and maybe even more important, was to find a core. We had clearly made Tyrese, he was part of the core, and then you could argue Miles, which I would. But the rest was, Neesmith, Matherin, Nembhard, who is staying, who is growing with this team. And now I think it's clear that if you want to say at least a core moving forward pieces, you've got Halliburton. I'm putting Neesmith right there with anybody. Now, Siakam, and then Turner. And then we're still kind of waiting on the next pieces to solidify.
Those are the exact 4 I had in my head. So,
but like I said, before the season, you could really only argue 2 were like, these guys are here to stay. Now, again, rookies are a little bit harder to judge because you're waiting for them to come through. So I think on that front, we have a clear core we're running forward with. We've got young guys who still have potential to pop. And then for the season grading, we are better than I definitely think when I sat here. I would have said we would be a play-in in that 7 to 10 range would have been my guess. Now the expectation, as you've said before, it's the 6th seed. We got to stay in above the play-in tournament, which if you look at the standings right now, it's, like I said, it's like a game or 2 to move up seeds and a game or 2.
It's close.
The Heat and Magic, I believe the Magic actually either are one, like a game back in the loss column or something.
Okay. They're right. It's a half or a 1. I saw it last night too. I looked. They won, and they went on a skid, and they're kind of climbing back. So I love the thought around the core, because if you look around any NBA team, and I know it's so easy, but I'm going to do it anyways, to go back to the Warriors and how Bob Myers built that team, which was getting pieces. Once you kind of realized, oh God, Steph's better than we thought, right? And that's kind of where we're at with Tyrese, is, oh God, he's better. Then it was, how do you start to build around him and find players that fit their game? Because that's really, there's so many great players in this league, and we've seen it so many times where superstars meet up and it doesn't work out because the playing styles don't work.
DeJounte.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's just, so it's not just about getting great players. It's about finding who you're going to, it's whether it's Steph Curry or Tyrese Halliburton, whoever it is, and then putting the pieces around them that fit their game. And that's where it's a hell of a lot easier said than done. And so I am excited. I think, Siakam, we talked about it last episode. The fit was the big reason why you pull that trade off. Miles has never looked better. I mean, when I watch Miles in a game like last night, and it's like, every one of his baskets is assisted by Tyrese. I mean, literally, Tyrese is finding him in all the right spots. And credit to Miles. That doesn't mean that it's an automatic 2 points. He's converting. He's still soft. He's still soft. We saw it so bad against the Warriors. I mean, that when he had, I forget who he was backing down. I think it was Pajemski. And woof. I mean, terrible. But Miles last night didn't try to do any of that shit. He was quick to get to his spot, and just let the ball fly. And that's when he's at his best. And so, yeah, you're starting to see some of these puzzle pieces come together. I do want to talk about Nesmith for a little bit because this is a guy that, I went down the rabbit hole on Nesmith a couple of days ago, maybe a week or so ago now, because, he was a throw-in. I mean, I looked at that Malcolm Brogdon trade, and it was like Daniel Tice, Aaron Nesmith, Nick Stauskas. Yeah. There was somebody else on that list, Jawan Morgan. Yeah. There were like 5 players on the list of names, but then it was a first-round draft pick. That was really we traded Brogdon for a first-round pick.
Like if you're seeing the report come through, that's the headline.
That's the headline. Yeah. And anything else was a couple of the guys that were in the trade never even put on a Pacers uniform, right? I think it was just Nesmith and Tice that did. And we saw Nesmith last year show flashes, right? But I went back and looked in. This is a guy that he's 6'6", 210, let's call it. Yeah. He's a small forward, and he's a small forward. Right. He really could be more of a 2 or a 3. And we played him something like 78% of his minutes at the power forward last year, asking him to do things that he really, while he was doing them because he's a tough-nosed, just whatever player, we were playing him out of position and not putting him in an optimal position to be successful. And I think, I started looking at this year. He didn't start for us at the beginning of the season. His first start was against the Hawks, had 17 points, and was fine. But he started getting more minutes after that, and it's been because of his defense. Yes. I mean, this is a guy that is setting the tone for, one of the NBA's worst defenses. We understand that. But if you look at the last 15 to 20 games, we're middle of the pack. Yep. We're like 16, 17 in the league. So we're trending in the right direction. I know correlation is not causation, but as Nesmith's minutes have gone up, our defense has gotten better progressively over the year. And he's first in the league in true shooting percentage among small forwards. He's second in the league in three-point percentage amongst all players, second to only Grayson Allen.
On decent volume.
Yeah, and he's shooting about 5 a game. Yep. So it's not like he's just taking 2 and making 1. He is stretching the floor. And then when Tyrese was out, he went on a maybe 10 or 12 game stretch where he was averaging 17.5 points, 7.5 rebounds, 4 assists. And you started to see, the stat line doesn't show you, he was driving to the basket. He was converting on a Euro step move. Last night he had a really nice floater in the lane. We know he can go in, and when he finishes strong, he can pound the rock. I mean, we've seen him have those types of dunks.
Nice dunk last night.
I'm just really bullish on his fit, and now Siakam comes in, and you're not having to throw him at Giannis for the whole game 100%. Or Jason Tatum for the whole game or whatever. And Nesmith's a knockdown shooter, which is what we need. And it's why I think the front office was so, I guess the Buddy equation wasn't as big of a deal because, and I'm not saying Nesmith is Buddy. Buddy's one of the best three-point shooters in the history of the league. We know that. He's next level. But Nesmith is out-kicking his coverage. He is carving out a role where I see him as a core piece, like you're saying. 100%. And he is the, as much as Tyrese is the star and the story of the season, Nesmith he's a surefire starter for us. Yep. He's going to play starters minutes no matter what. Yep. And he's the guy at the end of the game that's on the floor because of his defense. Yep. And so for us to have that for the next 3 years at $11 million a year, I'll get off my soapbox, but he has impressed beyond what I ever thought he would be. And so,
I think you hinted at it. One, offensively, obviously the shooting has been awesome, and the percentage probably has to equalize at some point. But I think we can determine he's probably going to be a 40+ 3-point or 40% plus
for sure
point shooter. Yeah. But the thing that's really surprised me, and you hinted at, is that driving ability that he didn't show in Boston at all. I didn't see it when I watched a lot of his college tape. I was actually a little nervous watching him when he first came and he was playing in the summer league. It looked like his handles were kind of all over the place. Yeah. I didn't really trust it. Yep. And now he's not a guy, and it fits so well, that needs the ball per se.
For sure.
He's moving off the ball. But when he gets it, he can pump fake, go to the rim, strong finisher. That floater game this year is, I don't remember him shooting any floaters last year.
Never.
And it looks good. And then the second thing is, you're right on the defense. And the thing I love with him specifically is the physicality. He's actually fouled out a few of the games of late, which I don't even care. I'm not worried. Usually guards and wings don't really have that kind of trouble. It's usually just the big guys. So, but he is just in people's grills. And, we don't want to play him at the 4, but you saw him. He's getting work against Brunson. He can guard pretty much everybody on the floor now. It varies on levels.
You don't put him on Embiid. I
was going to say, the centers. But outside of that, we've seen him guard. He's usually getting the best player on the opposing team.
For sure.
Night and night. Now, Nembhard's
depending upon who it is. And they'll share time.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But that's been great for me to see. So, Nesmith is just, in terms of we were saying before this year, it's like we've got Nembhard, Mather, Nesmith. We need somebody to pop. Somebody needs, and I've still got hope for those other guys, but it is clear that Nesmith has officially, he is here.
He's popped, and you can tell he's a hard worker.
Yep.
I was reading some stuff.
Oh, he's intense. He is,
Yeah, the Celtics, I don't know if it's a beat writer or somebody was doing a podcast. It's called Celtics Wire or something like that.
Yeah.
They were quoted as talking about how he's transformed his body.
Okay.
And they didn't see, and you could see it. He even from last year to this year, he has put on mass. He's not quite, he's not Jaylen Brown, but he's a big guy that is obviously putting in the work. And that's just what you love to see. It's probably why, Indiana fans are loving Nesmith.
Yeah,
and,
so.
and I think that's because they appreciate the blue collar player that comes in and carves out his spot. And I think that's probably a good segue to talk about. And I'll just, we kicked off this conversation talking about Buddy and the trade. And one of the things that I think we're both as fans looking forward to is, all right, who steps up? We know Nembhard is starting. We've seen some flashes from Shepherd, albeit the shooting hasn't really been there. Mathurin continues to be an enigma. I cannot figure it out. It's like hot and cold. I love him. I hate him. What are you seeing? Where are we at with those guys? Because so much of this is, like you said, about these guys taking that next step and somebody popping. Like the Warriors did with Draymond or Klay Thompson or whoever. That supporting cast started to pop. So where are you at with those, particularly the two guys from last year? We've talked enough about Shepherd, Mathurin and Nembhard. Where are you at on those guys here as we get into the All-Star break?
Yeah, I would say I'm with you in Mathurin. We talk about it. I watch all my games with my roommates. He is the guy who is, he makes you want to pull your hair out the most during the game. I will start then by reversing that and saying one thing that I do find a positive with Mathurin is if you look back at last season, we all know he came out of the gates on fire. His first couple months were he was just cooking, and then that rookie slump kind of hit, and the second half of the season was much worse. His percentages dropped, his numbers dropped. That has kind of reversed this year. Even though he was starting earlier in the year, he was getting less minutes, and his minutes have risen. His percentages have continued to grow. If you look, it was like November he's averaging 12, then January he's up to 14. Now he's up to 15 in February, and albeit it's been a couple games. But I do like that trend, but there is something, and you hinted that, and I might even let you kind of just take it. There is something mentally that just, I don't get his decision-making, his intensity. One game he's locked in, he's everywhere. You're like, this is the guy we want. And then he comes against the Knicks, and we're watching him last night. It's like, we were texting, what's going on? What is missing? And that's one of those things where it's, without being in the building, it's almost hard to know because we can only see the clips we get from his personality, which, he's a different guy. It's not a bad thing per se. I like his work ethic and his intensity, but last night it was like, where are you? Are you there?
Yeah, it's that's why I use the term enigma. It's really hard to put your finger on the pulse of what's going on because, after last night, we did exchange some text during the game, and I was frustrated because I'm sitting there and listen, expectations can be your enemy. When you expect something out of somebody they don't live up, that's all, it's not all on them. It's on you for having that set the bar at a certain place. But he's coming off of games where he's clearly, he had games of like 24, 31. I looked at his last 10 game split before we jumped on here. It's not that bad. It's 14 points a game, which is a little down from his overall season average, but he's played fine. I think the biggest thing for me is just like it's simple concepts, and I tried to explain this to Nikki last night because we were watching the game together. Nikki's my fiance, and I was like, I'm like, when you know something has been talked about, when you've prepared for something, when you have a scheme or a play, and you're this point in the season and you can't get it right, that tells me something else is going on. And you saw it last night in the final couple of minutes. Alex Burks gets on a heater. He was dropping. He was hitting everything he shot. And you saw Mathurin on him right before a timeout where Mathurin like lazily goes under this screen. And you could tell as soon as Carlisle called the timeout, he was pointing and screaming at Ben, because I have to assume the call was to fight over the top
100%.
and not let him get this wide open look.
If shooters are on fire, you don't go under.
Yeah, it just, and Rick's like looking at him like, what on earth? And then they go to the bench and Matherin sits down, and it's like he comes out of the huddle and he's walking back onto the floor as if he's coming back in the game. And Neesmith is like yelling at him like, no, you're not in, because Neesmith was on the bench.
Yeah.
So they subbed in Aaron for Ben because of that play.
This is a huge part of the game. I mean, now we're up, but
we were up, but they were on a run.
Yeah,
we were up like 22 and they cut it to 12 or something. So it was like, and that's just, those are the things that I wonder with Ben. It's like, does he not have the basketball IQ? We know he's gifted physically.
Yep.
He can get his shot off. He's turnover prone. When he's going downhill, last night he had 3 or 4 of the same exact play where he just kept going straight in the middle of the lane. They'd pick him, he'd fumble it, whatever. But he's obviously a talent, and nobody's questioning that. And that's why that expectation bar is there. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it, but we need him.
Oh yeah,
to pop.
Yeah,
absolutely.
He's still got the highest. Like, we can talk about Nembhard starting in a little bit. He still has the higher ceiling in my book.
For sure.
Somebody who can really become, an all-star level guy. Now,
for sure.
I'm not saying that's going to be my prediction, but
no, I would have felt a lot better about that last year than I do this year, and that's not to say that if you look statistically, he is having a better season.
Yeah, I would agree.
He is having a more consistently, in terms of averages and percentages and efficiencies.
The one thing we'll give him credit, his three-point ball has come around for sure. I mean, now look, it still comes and goes, but it feels a lot better than especially the second half of last season.
He's not Klay Thompson, but he can shoot the three. Yeah. I mean, he can stretch the floor. The defense has to honor it. Yeah. And I just think we've got to sort that position out. Yeah. Right now, we've got more talent on the bigs than we can know what to do with. Correct. I mean, I don't know what we're going to do with Obi. Jalen Smith, we've talked about. Jackson's there, and we still got to get Jarris Walker on the floor. I do think Jarris is making a case to get some minutes in larger lineups as a 3, and maybe that helps him. Yeah. But if I had to put a grade to it to kind of bring this segment in for a landing, I was thinking about this last night in terms of my expectation going into the year, and the fact that I think our over-under was at like 38 wins or something like that. You've got to go B+. Yeah. I mean, somewhere. I don't want to say A- because we've still lost to Charlotte. We've lost to Chicago. We've lost to Washington. We've lost to Portland twice. We've lost games that really good teams just can't lose. You got to find ways to win them. But it's been fun. I mean, it's been a fun year. I think everybody's looking forward to the All-Star break, players that is. And frankly, we should be 8 games above 500. Yeah, we've got Charlotte and Toronto to close out, the slate on the road before All-Star. But
those two teams are in clear tank mode.
Yeah, they're I mean, Toronto's shipping everybody out, and Charlotte's, Brandon Miller's been playing.
Brandon Miller's
phenomenal, awesome. but they're not looking to win ball games. I mean,
they shipped PJ Washington, what I thought was actually a pretty good deal for them. They're moving assets to hopefully build on next year.
Yeah. All right. So last segment here, we'll kind of dive into the All-Star game. Yeah. Obviously, this has been a long time coming. I think we were supposed to have it in 21. Yeah. And it was COVID and all that. And so, this has been, many, many years in the works. I probably have a little bit more of a memory of Super Bowl week than
I do a little, but I was 12.
But what are you looking forward to? I mean, what's on your short list of must see, gonna do this, whatever, as All-Star ascends upon us here in Indianapolis?
Yeah, I mean, so we can kind of hit. I think, Brad, you're going, it sounds like, to all 3 nights. I will be most likely going on Saturday night. Saturday night's the most fun night, I think,
for
typically. Sure. The All-Star game itself, I'm not breaking any news here, can be hit or miss just because you don't know who's going to try and what exactly is going to be going on. Yeah. But we've got a lot of participation with Pacer players, especially through Monday or the Friday and Saturday. So I'll just kind of start off the Rising Stars Challenge.
Yep.
We've got 2 participants. We've got Benny playing Matherin, and then we've got Shibwe, who's going to be on the G League team.
Honestly, I got to say, I thought that was cool that they're incorporating some of the best G League players into that.
They did that last year.
Oh, they did. See, I didn't know that. Yeah, I saw that. Because I was kind of scratching my head. I'm like, Sheboy, really? Like, but he has been phenomenal in the G League. So I think that's cool.
So I was looking. The G League team always kind of, at least last year, got rocked in the Rising Stars Challenge. So I just wanted to look and just kind of just get a feel for the team. So there are 4 teams. I'm not going to go through the G League team player by player because the truth is I don't know most of them. But there are 3 teams. You've got headlines with Team POW with Vic, Brandon Miller, Przenzskis, Jaime Jaquez, Jabari, and then Team Tamika. Shout out Tamika Catchings.
Yep.
Paulo, Ivy, Duran, Keegan, Murray, and then Team Jalen, which is going to have Chet, Jalen, Matherin, Shaden Sharp, Lively. So Matherin's going to be suiting up with Chet, one of my favorite players to watch in the NBA. I think those are some good teams. Paulo's probably the best name in the Rising Stars.
Is he going to play?
He's on this list. I imagine he's going to play. Where do you think his effort level is?
Yeah. How many minutes does he get? And so help me understand this because maybe I don't get it. Are there 3 teams?
So the 4th is the G League team.
Oh,
and then I forget exactly how they rotate. They'll kind of play. I think it's like they each play twice, and the winners of it play each other.
Okay, I did not know that. So breaking news for my brain.
Yeah. So the Gambler and Me, these are actually really fun things to gamble on because Vegas has no idea how to line these, but we have no idea how to gamble on them either. So I kind of like Team POW. I think Wemby, Miller, Przenzski, Jaime Jaquez, Jabari Smith, that's probably the team to beat.
Yeah.
But the Rising Stars, Benny will go full out.
I was just going to say, you got to look at the makeup of the guys, like who's really going to compete.
Yeah. That's kind of why I like Vic, though. I expect this will be his only thing in the All-Star weekend. He'll probably be there next year, honestly. Brandon Miller will want to show up, Przenzski. So that's kind of why I lean to those guys.
Yeah, I love that. No, I think that'll be a lot of fun. I didn't realize that they had broke it out that way. In my mind, it was still, I guess it was still like a rookies versus sophomores thing. I know it's, first and second year players plus the G League, but
I kind of think I wish it was still kind of like that. You kind of lose that competition aspect of it where the second years guys don't want to lose. Or we did before they've done like the world verse, and I kind of like that. We'll see how this goes. I'm sure it'll still be fun.
And that's going to be at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, which I think is the right way to do that when you're actually playing basketball games. I know the celebrity game is going to be at Lucas Oil on All-Star Saturday night, but anybody that's been in Lucas Oil for a basketball game knows that you're better off playing basketball in Gainbridge. I know why they did it. I know I'm not trying to take a shot, but we talk about Gainbridge Fieldhouse being the best place
and they put
for basketball.
Millions in the last couple of years for this event.
For renovations. I know why they did it. I'm going to go in with an optimistic attitude for Saturday night, but I wish more of the events were at Gainbridge. It's just
I haven't talked to a basketball fan that's excited that it's in Lucas Oil.
I think the casual fan that's just here for the party,
for the show, that's coming in
it's like
league and enjoy it.
I'm sure you get more people in the door at Lucas Oil, and that's why the committee did it. I get all of that. You've got 2 great venues, and the beauty of Indianapolis, I will say this, they are playing to our strengths in that everything is condensed. It's all right there. You can walk from venue to venue. They've got the crosswalks. They've got the convention center. They're going to have all the outdoor stuff. I think the slate of entertainment is fair. I mean, I've seen Lil Wayne's going to be here. T-Pain's going to be here. Zed kind of touches on the younger EDM crowd. Keith Urban, which is a favorite of mine. Shout out to Keith, my old studio days. No, I think that part's going to be fun. And then I do want to get your thoughts on All-Star Saturday night because there's been this trend over the last couple of years. And they did this in the arena, I forget what night it was, maybe Thursday, against the Warriors. It was the last home game. Was that the last home game?
Yeah.
Okay. They put the players on the big screen and they said, dunk contest or 3-point contest. What do you like more? Okay. And I just feel like there's been this momentum over the last couple of years for 3-point contest. Yeah. I'm more excited about the 3-point contest than I am the dunk contest going partly because of Tyrese, but you have more stars in that. And I just think, I have to ask you about the dunk contest personnel because what am I missing? I just don't get it.
Yeah. So let's go over for those of you who don't know, we've got Jaylen Brown. We've got Mac McClung, who won it last year.
Yep. G League player.
We've got Jaime Jaquez and then Jacob Toppin.
Yep.
Obi's brother. So I was looking, it's an odd look. So let's start just, if I were to guess who is the most talented of this group, I would go McClung again to win it.
Yeah.
I would then go Toppin below, and I'll talk a little about him, then Jalen, and then Jaquez.
Yeah.
I've talked to a lot of people who watch a lot of college basketball. I've looked at all of Jaquez's highlights. I look back at his draft combine vertical to see his numbers.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't see it. I don't know where his flash is going to come.
Yeah.
Obviously, he wouldn't join if he didn't think he had something.
Had something to offer.
But, that one was the one that definitely stood out to me.
Yeah.
I don't like.
Well, and I've watched him play. I like his game. I mean,
he's a terrific player. He's another Heat guy that they just grabbed out of nowhere that people were overlooking, and he will be a long-time player in the NBA.
For sure. Supremely talented. And I kind of feel in a very different way because Jalen Brown's obviously an extremely established player, multiple-time All-Star in the league, and this is the first time an All-Star is going to come back and do the contest in a while. I don't remember what the number of years are, but it's been a while since there's been an All-Star level player. Even when Levine was doing it, I know he's made an All-Star game. Yeah. I think it was prior to that. So it's been a while
that was
since
kind of his coming out party. In the NBA.
Since we've had this. So, but I don't think of him as a dunker.
No,
he's not. So I don't understand. And again,
before you go, I was looking at his draft combine thing, and one of the things they said is lacks athleticism.
Seriously, that's where I'm kind of just like because frankly, he's got the most to lose. Like he doesn't. He's an all-star. He's playing in the game on Sunday. He could just.
Sorry, are you talking Jalen now?
Yeah.
I was talking. That was not.
Okay.
That was Jaquez. Sorry.
Okay.
Jalen
I'm sorry.
Was not. Jalen
yeah,
was not,
I was just saying. I'm like, I think he is an athlete, but I don't see him as a high flyer. Whatever. Like, I know it's unfair to benchmark these guys against a Vince Carter or a Zach LaVine or an Aaron Gordon or whatever, but at the same time, when you're talking about pure entertainment value, that is the benchmark.
Yes.
And none of these names in the dunk contest for the last however many years have been anything close to getting you excited like you were before. So, I am more excited about the three-point contest, and I'm more excited about the skills contest, frankly, because we're going to have our kind of hometown team, including Matherin. So that'll be fun to see, him and Miles and Tyrese. But I think there's one other thing I want to ask you about. Yeah. What's going on with the court? Because the court's going to be a first of its kind. This is what I am really excited about this really see. What is it?
You might actually know more. All I know is really the videos they put out, and it just seems like it's electronically.
I think it's like a glass floor.
Yeah,
it's like
they can project things and move things and show pictures and images, and we've seen this. The Cavs actually have something similar to this, where they do like their home intro video on the court.
Okay.
They might probably project it also on the jumbo, but they have all that going on. So I think it's probably come from that technology that's been growing.
Okay.
The videos they showed look really cool. I don't know anything beyond
okay. I was just curious. I don't know either, and I don't even think it's projected, Ryan. I think it is.
Sorry, yeah.
I think it's glass. Yeah.
LED.
It's like a screen. Like the floor is built on glass screens, essentially. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. And then obviously, I don't know if you have anything else for Saturday.
Not particularly. I would just say, do you think we might win the skills challenge, or was Tyrese made it to the final round last year in the three? I would think between those two, we take one of them.
I would put my money on Tyrese in the three. Yeah. He gets hot, and I know, I'm trying to go in my head who else is in there. Maxey, Lillard, Donovan Mitchell, Malik Beasley,
Brunson, Trae Young, and Karl Anthony Towns. And don't sleep on Towns. He won it as the complete underdog.
Yeah, Towns can get high. There's a lot. That's why I think the three-point contest.
It's the hardest one to probably predict, though.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, it's so streaky. Yeah. But I think, we saw it last year. Tyrese can get hot, and I just.
He'll want to put on a show. I think between the skills, the All-Star, he'll want to do something, and the three might be his best opportunity to do it.
I hope for his sake he can win that. I'd love for them to win both. But no, I think it's going to be a fun night. Obviously this is. You and I are probably both very proud Indianapolis, homegrown people. Yeah. It's always fun to have people come in, and not that you want to be judged, but I'm very confident that we put on good events.
Indy prides itself on their events. Yeah. We know this, and I've done this. Friends, I went to school at University of Dayton, Ohio, and they're like, "What are you talking about?" It's like, this is something we're known for, and it's like you talked about the Super Bowl, the All-Star, March Madness. We held the whole thing when COVID shut. This is something we pride ourselves. And why not? Because it's going to be fun.
Yeah, it is, and we're going to be uniquely set up. That's the biggest thing that people don't understand about Indy is that it really is. We were down. They've built this Unity Plaza or whatever, and there's a new restaurant right next to Gainbridge Fieldhouse. We were down there, and they were setting up all the stuff for TV crews and whatever. It's very fan accessible. That's the cool part is anybody can go get a taste of this. So if you aren't a basketball fan, but you just want to see what's going on, just come downtown. There's going to be plenty of stuff going on. All the bars are right there. They'll have the entertainment, what have you. And then All-Star Sunday is going to be, in Baker's Life. I'm excited to, frankly, and this is me wanting us to be judged. I'm curious to see what the national talking heads have to say. Yeah. Baker's Life, I've been to probably 6 or 8 different NBA arenas. It is the best one I've been to. It's the best place to watch a game that I've ever seen, and so that's going to be cool. I hope the game. We're returning to an East versus West dynamic, which I think is really cool. I'm excited about that. We'll have to see how it goes. I hope it's an economic win for the city. I'm sure it will be. Weather's been so good this week. It seems like it may be sprung a week early, but anything else before we wrap up?
I had 2 things that I did and finish up. These are just things I thought we'd finish up that I found funny that we can kind of always do that happened this week in the NBA.
For sure.
First one that I found funny, and you hit on it, Pat Bev was traded to the Bucks for basically a washing machine. But, no, the funny thing is, game 1, Pat Bev is so ridiculous. He's in the huddle and grabs the clipboard and is trying to get everybody galvanized. And I know he's a vet and a leader, but I don't understand these guys who just come in. You have no idea what's going on with this team.
Right.
He's never played for the Bucks. He's played for a lot of teams. He's never played with Giannis. And I'm watching, and Brook Lopez is literally just trying to shoulder him out of the fucking thing. And I'm just dying laughing at these guys. This stuff happens all the time where you see players who are almost just so vocal. It's nobody's listening.
Right.
Dude, what is going on?
So it's funny you say that. It makes me think of this. I know you've got one more anecdote here. There was an interview this week that happened post-Warriors game where Clay didn't finish the game. And Clay's getting interviewed, and unannounced, because as you're talking, I'm thinking about Draymond Green, because he's another guy like Pat Bev that's just off the rails.
He'll be the next one.
Perfect. So I'll tee you up. This is a great lead-in, because Draymond's in the background. He's like, you're going to ask him about what it's like to finish the game on the bench? And it's like... And the reporter was like, well, now that you ask, he's basically throwing Clay under the bus, and then when Clay starts to answer the question, you could tell he's getting emotional. It's hard for him as somebody who's, a top, 10, 15 player in the league for whatever it's been, 10, 12 years. And Draymond's just in the back singing, nonchalant. I'm just like, dude, you have no sense of awareness at all. And the answer is no. Obviously, we've seen it on video, how many dozen times. But these guys. So, what else did Draymond do?
So Draymond played the Suns last night. It was, if you remember, the final nail in the straw on his indefinite suspension was his fling on Nurkic. So it was a rematch against Nurkic, and he was. You'd think, a guy who had just come off suspension was going to counseling. Would come into this game with a bit of humility.
Right.
Complete opposite. This guy was out of control. Early in the game, does a post. He makes a really nice move, left-hand hook, does the immediate short thing on Nurkic. They start jawing later in the game. He's cursing him out. It's the same type of thing. And the NBA, the refs are just letting it go. I was like, so do you want to stop this behavior? What are we doing here, NBA? They don't know. That's the key.
That I was just going to say, they don't know what to do, because on the one hand, it gets some clicks. He's a star, or was a star player on a championship team. Obviously, one of the more out there personalities, but
don't get me wrong, I do love that. Our team this year has shit talked the entire year. Teams that is pretty much a staple of one of our things
for sure. And but Ryan, it's and this is it's you can go back. I don't care what era of basketball you're playing in, but there's a difference between talking shit and having fun and jawing with the crowd and then being a nuisance to the game. And it's like, it seems like Draymond has found himself, and I don't know if you would agree with this, it's like in our lifetime, there was kind of the Rodman era, right? And it was Rodman was that guy that just very talented, championship level teams, but was just clearly next level ridiculous.
Yep.
And then you had Ron Artest, Meta World Peace. Same deal, defensive player of the year, extremely talented, next level, out of his mind. And it's like Draymond is this generation's just next level, obviously talented, and the league has never figured it out. It was like that season with the brawl, everybody was talking about how Artest was getting it together and he was being better and all this stuff. And you see him laying on the scorer's table, he's
trying to calm down.
Chill, this is a new Artest, because it was very early in the season. Cup lands and the league's changed forever. So I don't know if the league will. I think the league knows that they're towing the line.
I was to say, they obviously tried something. It was a weird suspension. They never had any days. And like I said, he has to play with a certain amount of energy. He needs that. It's, McConnell comes in, is playing with energy.
For sure.
That's how they do it. But it's like we saw this literally with Miles. He was going up for that rebound last game against the Warriors when we played. Yeah. And Miles was kind of over the top of him with the arm. But he clearly then hooks Miles and then falls. It's a dangerous play, too.
For sure.
He's just... I love watching him because I do like the ridiculousness of the NBA.
Yeah.
There's a lot of personalities who are just... they don't make sense.
Well, and it's unlike any other sport because it's right there on display. You get to see it. Even in the NFL, you're kind of behind the helmet, behind the mask a little bit.
And even now, under the rim, you can kind of hear that mic echo during games to pick up what players are saying, even if you're not there.
For sure. And so much of social media is after the fact, they get the close up of it. You see.
There's a guy courtside last night with Tyrese who.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that on the. He was sitting right there on the end of the sideline, kind of near the baseline.
I'm sure Tyrese said something.
Yeah, I'm sure he did, and I love that about him.
Once again, we're not talking that. It's just if you didn't see, go look at some of Draymond's antics in this Nurkic game. And again, it's heightened because that's literally why he was suspended. Was this player? And then after the game, he was still in the locker room jawing about it. Yeah. It's just he can't let it go.
He can't, and that's it is who he is. To think that he's going to change because of an indefinite suspension, and he went and got counseling for a couple weeks,
well, that's the point.
And that's the NBA doing its lip service. They're putting the lipstick on the pig, and I'm not calling
Ja
him a pig.
Keeping his receipts after his suspension.
Ja's another one. He may be. I mean, Jesus.
Ja, we can talk about Ja.
But anyways, we are there at this point in the season, the proverbial All-Star break. That's kind of the break. Here's where we're at type thing. It's fun that it's going to be in Indy this year. So for the rest of the NBA that's off, we're going to have a lot going on. I'm looking forward to it. And we'll pick this thing back up. Hopefully we can close out the season on a little bit of a run. We didn't really talk about the schedule. We can maybe touch on that next time.
Next week.
After the death run of January, second hardest schedule in the league going in. We now have the third easiest schedule for the balance of the year. So we should get some wins. And this
healthier too. So
it's gonna be a fun team. All right, we'll catch up next week.
Love it.
See you.